G'day guys, how's it going? Welcome back of course to the Time Bomb channel, and I hope all is good in your part of the world. We're going commando here on the channel today, but not in the literal sense you'll be relieved to hear. By way of an introduction to the watch today, think of the immortal words of Missy Elliott when she sang "Get Your Freak On." I doubt that she had one of these watches in mind, but quite prophetic when you consider how freaky this watch is. There's of course the Tudor PO1 Commando Black Bay Ref 7150. It's big, it's bold, it's steely, it's unconventional, and for some reason it seems to annoy a lot of people, but I'm not one of them. If you're in the market for a desk diver or a subtle piece of wrist garnish, well then I'm very sorry to disappoint, because this ain't it. In fact, it's a dive watch with a bi-directional 12-hour bezel. I'm just going to pause there and zoom in a little. All right, so these were released, I believe, back in 2019, and they attracted a lot of ridicule, with many calling it the Tudor SKX, whilst many others took one look at it and said, thank the watch gods for giving us something a little different. Just by way of very, very brief background, these PO1s are essentially new old watches. The design is allegedly based on a 1960s US Navy prototype dive watch. There is, of course, much discussion as to the legitimacy of that claim, and also on whether or not the reason it didn't go into production was because it didn't work, or another reason. So I'll leave that up to you guys to decide. I also noted that recently Breitling have released this Chronomat, which also then has an extended lug extension, if you like, and device attached to it also. Note also that their Swiss cousins with the green boxes, of course, are far, far too conservative to release something as freaky as this. I read somewhere, but don't quote me on this, that these are due to be discontinued, which may help with the value. If you can find a brand spanking new one of these for a very good price and keep it in your safe for a long time, good option. Where to start with this one? I suppose it's quite simple, because looking at it, to me, there are two key standouts to this watch. Firstly, that gorgeous dial, and secondly, yes, those over-engineered lugs. Let's kick off with these humongous hinges that could easily have been cast from the bellows of the Mountain King. These steely articulations do actually, in fact, allow for the extreme long length north to south aspects of this watch to actually then fit on wrist a little more naturally, or alternatively then of course also over dive suits, which one would imagine would have been the original rationale behind this. But for most people on wrist, this watch is simply going to be too long. It's 56 mils in total. Across the dial, it's a smidgen under 42 mils. It's 14.5 mils thin, and it weighs in around 154 grams, with 90% of that weight in the watch head. So yes, and because of those articulations as well, combined articulations, head weight, there are top wobbles aplenty. My wrist is 7.25, and it's pushing it. It's so top heavy that also the strap underneath doesn't really gain a lot of purchase on your wrist to prevent that wobble either. Bit of a damn shame, because to me, the watch looks absolutely freaking gorgeous. I will use the word freak. But as I say, it just makes it a little bit of a challenge as a daily wearer. I think though, kudos to Tudor, because they could, when recreating this watch, they could have easily swapped out these lug extensions for something more contemporary. Again, so massive kudos to them for sticking with their original design blueprints. The bezel locking mechanism activated just by this top articulation here, just a simple push. He says, there we go. It releases then the bezel, which allows you, as I mentioned before, to bi-directionally push it around. Bear in mind though that due to the sort of limited coin edge, cutout edge there that you have, and because it sits so flush to the case body, it's not the grippiest of bezels, and it's going to need more of that push down to activate it, rather than, there's no purchase on the side there to shift that thing at all. But the upside, of course, of all of this is that it is the fidgeteer's delight, because yeah, just popping that off releasing it again and having a fiddle here is delightful. Absolutely delightful. I'll shut up, have a listen. Yeah, 60 clicker there. Really, 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 really nice. Zero black back plate. And very easy then, of course, just to squidge him back up. So I can see through the camera here, get it back up to the 12 and then depress to fix. Brilliant. Clickbait bezel, anyone? Yeah, okay, moving on. However, of course, these lug extensions then do make for some very serious strap change issues if you don't like this one. And I do agree with the masses here that the strap, whilst it looks very, very good and feels very, very good, it's not the perfect match. It's a leather and rubber combination that will probably have your dominatrix rubbing her hands with glee. But should you decide to take this in the drink on a regular basis, it's going to age very badly, and then it's just going to be a case of replacing it. Maybe that will add to the aging appeal of it, or something which again, because it's an older design, you know, maybe it shouldn't look shiny new. Maybe it should have some rough edges. So again, personal opinion, will decide, I think, on that one. If you do change the strap out, then of course, bear in mind that because you have a much more limited length to the strap, that what happens then is, as you can see here, is that the buckle and your tang get pushed much closer to your lug on this side than it would do ordinarily on other watches. I mean, again, I've seen some posts on Watch You Seek where people have swapped these things out for meshes, or even you know, they've dremeled down steel and things like this. So people have gotten creative with it. I haven't seen, and I could be wrong here, that Tudor have released anything alternative to this one. But please do drop a comment down below if I'm incorrect on that, or alternatively, if you've got some better strap options there. Let's just pop him open again, just so that we can get a slightly better view of the case back. Camera doesn't like this. Okay, fine, waste of time. I'll drop a close-up shot there of the case back. Pretty nondescript as the standard of these black bays. You know, fit for purpose, flush to the wrist, and of course then the no option of the see-through case back, which then might have allowed you to see the movement. It is, of course, buzzing away inside. It's the MT5612 movement that I believe again was conceived for use in the Pelagos. So anti-magnetic goodness, very robust, very accurate, and a very wholesome 70 hours of power reserve. What else was I going to say on this one? So yeah, just coming back to the front of the watch and the position of the crown. Again, many screamed Seiko. I think back in the 60s, you know, I don't know who did it first. If you do know, let me know. But it is, of course, very Willard-like. And the crown guards as well there really do nestle or sit very nicely either side of the crown, but do not restrict movement at all. Access to the crown, which unscrews perfectly, resounding pop out, and then the action, again, as you would expect. Lovely. Really, 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 really nice. Absolutely no issue, complaints, problems at all with anything on that. Back to the dial though, because as I said before, that's one of the things to me that is a clear standout on this one. I love it. It's so clean, it's so legible with those classic flakes, and yet dollops and dollops of details. The dial, the loom pips, and the hands as well create that fauxtina factor. But I think it's done slightly better here than because it's not done so overtly as it has been on many other watches. And example, the little detail of matching the color of the date wheel to the hands and the pips, to me just adds again a little bit more uniformity. It's subtle and easily missed, I think, by many onlookers. And then lastly, just at the bottom there, of course, we've got the splash of blood red above the 6 there, adding that necessary contrast to this otherwise steely behemoth. Yeah. It's difficult not to like the steel, because the finishing on it, the satin finishing on it, I mean, it's just beautifully done. I mean, beautifully done. It really is perfect. The loomage on this one, just while we're talking about the hands and the pips, It's solid. It really, really is. Yeah, absolutely no complaints. It's perhaps not, you know, sort of, you know, headlight shining lume, but with a more vintage oriented piece, I think it works absolutely fine. The domed dial underneath here is quite a challenge to photograph, especially under the huge lump of domed crystal that you've got up on the top there as well. It makes for some great distortions, but very challenging on the photography side. So not brilliant photos there, but anyway, enough eye candy with the distortion there to keep your eyeballs entertained adequately. And as I said before, even though I think it's just that sort of, you know, a plain black dial, matte black dial in that sense, I think it just, and obviously you've then got the black markers on the bezel as well. I think that combination of black and steel is ideal. I mean, think of coal and shovel, and you'll get what I'm talking about. Generally, I think Thule watches tend to go with function over Wonder Woman's good looks. But I think here that Tudor have elbowed in enough eye candy that to me, my eyes, it's better looking than the standard Black Bay 58s. It's quirky, idiosyncratic, ugly, yet at the same time, I find it strangely satisfying. The BB58, the red one, I'll pop a link up here that I reviewed the other week, is more your everyday, every man's watch. And I think that's evidenced by its success. This one will tell you that you're not really moved by other people's opinions, which in the post-truth era we live in nowadays certainly gets my nod of approval. If H.L. Mencken were still alive with us today, it's the type of watch I think that I would see him wearing, while all those around him are wearing tags. That's a good one for the haters. As a one watch collection piece, it might actually prove too much for most people. As I say, most people with wrists under 7 inches are really going to struggle with this one. Talking of watches on wrists, in tribute to the old frogs of the 60s, I'm wearing my Men in Rusty black G-Shock from, what is it, 12, 13 years old now, this one, still going strong. But I was coming back to what I was saying. So as a one watch collection piece, this one might be a little bit too much for most people. But if you own several watches, I think what this one would do is add something quixotic to your watch quiver that is going to keep you smirking with intrigue for years to come. So there we go, guys. Over to you. What do you reckon to this one? Is it too much prototype to be wearable, or is it, you know, that ideal left field option? Look forward to your comments. Thanks as always for your time and for your view. And of course, until the next watch video, this is your host, the Bombardier, signing off. Cheers, guys.